Hi.
Hello.
Oh, hi. I've been making some bead bracelets, and I don't know if it will sparkle. It's sparkling a little bit.
Hi there. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for joining us, Alexis, Samar, and Joseph from afar, Joshua from here on stage. My name is Chloe. I'm part of the programming team. And we've just finished this block. I would love for everyone to introduce themselves and their film, and to think perhaps for a minute about moments that were represented in these films that would not be, or would be nearly, if not entirely, invisible, if not for your eye, and what brought you to these subjects, these projects. We could start with Alexis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis McCrimmon, and my film is Remote Views. And I think what brought me to the subject matter of my film is that it's actually a personal story in some ways. For those at the screening, if you saw a man with some awesome glasses and a cool mustache, that's my father. He was one of the producers of the cable access program called The Urban Scene that a good chunk of that in-studio material comes from. And so the process of making this film has been one for me of investigating inheritance and also just dealing with the legacy of access media as it's, it's still around in the country, but it's pretty much, died off or been dissolved. So.
And further threatened every day. Right? Yeah. I did see that your father's name was listed as in the archive there, or that's producing the archive. That's so cool. Samar?
Hi, everyone. My name is Samara Samiri. And I apologize for talking about my glitter earlier. I thought it was still somewhat private.
We need to know about it, so it's good.
Real crystal, if you can believe. My film is what goes up, and I will recite the first 3 lines. All my life I've fought gravity. Who is gravity? My father. Yeah, and it like the film was like, I'm sure everyone's film was like a quite long process. And for me, the longest process involved the writing. Yeah, and also like the lack of funding. But I'm really proud to have like almost done everything myself, including carrying a trampoline, a tripod, camera, like 4 lenses through the desert, and my like little kind of my leather slipper wedding shoes, which are now completely destroyed. I had to wear different shoes for my wedding. And yeah, it's interesting. During the 10 years I lived in Tucson, I never visited the airplane boneyard. Like the presence of jets in the city was so oppressive already that I just refused to go. And it was like leaving and living abroad and living in Lebanon, where also the military planes are quite present. That led me to like just kind of confronting the importance of facing that site, and also like trying to like resist it in some way, and a bit like puncture the seriousness of the place, because like humor is such a wonderful, like, or maybe the most wonderful defense mechanism, that can also be a bit too, it can work a bit too well. And my husband is Iraqi. He has a really great sense of humor. He says in Iraq, like everyone, like on the bus, treat each other as relatives, and they're always joking. Yeah, and the clothing I wear was like the clothing I wore to, besides the shoes, the clothing I wore to our wedding. And I think that's enough for now. I hope that was a satisfactory answer.
Absolutely. There is something certainly taunting about the movements that you make in that film, and I'm sure we'll have more to speak about in a moment. Joseph?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Colleen. I directed Silos del Cielo. Thanks for having me. Gosh, this is a good question. I am probably always a little confused as to what brings me to any project. This one in particular, I was probably most drawn to Ronald Revel, the architect. I met him through a friend in maybe 2018. And yeah, he's just a fascinating person, specifically with Skylos, these earthen structures he built in the San Luis Valley, which, if you have not been there or heard of it, is a like high alpine valley on the Colorado, New Mexico border. And I think I was drawn to his practice of combining ancient tradition with bleeding edge technology. It seemed brave to me and sort of absurd and like a true experiment what he was doing. So the robot he's using in the film, I don't know a lot about tech, but it seemed very DIY, and the robot he uses now for creating buildings is very new, like looks very modern. But I kind of liked that it seemed clunky, but still made these beautiful structures. So yeah, this is a convoluted answer, but I was drawn to both him as a person and his practice, but also the specificity of this combination of, like Adobe is thousands of years old, and then you've got this technology, the 3D printing technology that's very, very new. And that collision I found intriguing. Also, I'm inspired by that particular tract of land, which is a borderlands area. Not just because it's the Colorado-New Mexico border, but I believe it was at one point the US-Mexico border. So it has a really complicated history, and a lot of Ronald's work revolves around that complicated history. So there's a lot of subtext to working in that environment. That kind of gets my brain going. And so a lot of the project was just about me being present there and trying to absorb what it's like to create in that space. It's also very remote, and it's pretty harsh. It can be very hot. I was there in the summer, so it was very hot, but in the winter, it's extremely cold. It can be like -20 Fahrenheit there. So it's an interesting place.
A clashing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. It was wonderful to see that 3D printer become filthy and like covered in mud. I really, really liked that dichotomy. Joshua?
Yeah. Hi, guys. My name is Josh Markowitz, and I directed Kitty Catherine Sings the Blues. First of all, thank you guys for having me, and thanks to all of you guys for being here for this morning slot. That's actually really commendable. And yeah, I feel like a lot of things I make, the access to this story and like the subject, Kitty Catherine, kind of fell into my lap. She was actually my neighbor for 2 years. Oh. She lived right across the street from me when I was living in Middletown, Connecticut. And I first met her. So I'm also a musician, and I would play music with my friends kind of outside because it was in the middle of the pandemic when I first met her. And she came by one day and I really thought that she was going to give us a noise complaint, but she was actually really excited and told us that she was a jazz singer too. And we kind of started this relationship through music. And then through being neighbors, she would always invite us over. She was a very giving person, would always try to like give us like food from like events she catered, which was usually like garbage bags full of loaves of bread. And like furniture and all this weird stuff. But she would also invite us over to tell us stories and would call us over. And then we'd be there for like 2 or 3 hours while she just told us all these like larger than life tales of coming up as a musician and her life in North Carolina and all these things. And I just knew that I wanted to do something with her and I wasn't sure what. And I feel like it also really, the story that I was kind of interested in changed a lot over the course of making the film. I was always really interested in her vulnerability and kind of her openness about loneliness. And I feel like that was kind of always at the heart of the film. It was always a film about loneliness. And I really related to the way that she thought about it, about kind of like trying to build communities or move to different places or do these things to kind of get away from that. But there's this incredible hopefulness that she also kind of carried even in old age. But I think I originally wanted the film to really be about her relationship with music and like trying to recapture that in her life. And I had all these plans to shoot a performance with her and do all these things that had to get scrapped because of health concerns. And, you know, one of the first weekends that I had access to this gear, we were all ready to shoot. She was actually hospitalized. And so I didn't know if we would be able to shoot with her at all. I wasn't really interested in pushing it because I wanted her to focus on her health. And so I had all this gear and that I'd already paid for all this film, but I kind of had to lean back on what I already had, which was 3 hours of a pre-interview that I had not planned on using, which is most of the voiceover, if not all of it that you hear in the film, as well as all the music that she had given me on CDs that she just had lying around that I never was going to use, or I was going to use, but I ended up really leaning on that and trying to tell her story through the music. And then ultimately we're able to get access to her. She mentioned in the film, she has a long history of health issues and she's tough as nails. So she recovered really quickly and wanted to do some. And so very carefully, we were able to shoot a little bit with her. And it kind of became less about her relationship with music and more about her relationship with love in old age, I think.
And music being something that is a true love of hers. Yeah.
Yes, and expressing those things through music, I think, was the way that that relationship was still kind of kept alive for me. So those are, I guess, the things that drew me into it.
Has she seen the film?
Yeah, she's seen the film, and she enjoyed it. Yeah,
I assume she did. I have many questions. Looking at our audience, there's something so interesting about expressing a movement that's dedicated to another action or something that's representing a larger idea. I love, Samari, the moment where we get to hear that history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, which echoed in Alexis' piece, the moment of a rap-a-map. There's something about looking for these patterns. I'm interested in where you found sort of the hand that you were looking for, or something that was waiting for you in these stories, the echo that you were looking for. Maybe this is a continuation of my first question, but what is it that was uncovered for you in the process of making a film like a piece that you made? And if we could start with Samar, that would be wonderful.
Oh, that is such an interesting question. I think, you know, I think I'll start with like how long it took me to face, you know, from the beginning, I was like writing about this, like, I think starting in like 2018, I started writing about this. My almost enlisting in the military, or maybe it was later. Might have been 2019, because I remember I was writing to Wadidrad, we're just having like a correspondence,
Mhm.
And I realized writing to him that it sort of came back, like I'd repressed almost joining the military. And it kind of came back in like a flood, that whole period. So I was like kind of writing these like long essays about that. But it took me a long time to like face that I needed to include the pilots. Like it was very late in the process. It was like I remember it was April 2022. And it was really hard to face that because it was my first time dealing with other people. I mean, it was my first time even dealing with myself and my work so directly, but it was also my first time dealing with other people. And these were men who had been through like unimaginable trauma and who had died on foreign soil on the same country that had like spread as imperialism to them. And as I say in the film, had like flown operations against them, and it like I kept, when I was writing about them, I kept going into like this more journalistic factual mode, and it took a long time for me to like kind of take the leap in terms of imagining their experiences and then taking the leap into like connecting. And then once I did that, it was easy to connect them to the landscapes where they had crashed. And it was also a lot easier to find the correct tone, and like a tone that like what I hope is like unified throughout the piece. I'll mention, I have this other thing I want to mention about love later on, but I'll leave it at that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Hi, Hamad. Would you like to introduce yourself? We're just in the midst of Q&A and starting to pass questions around.
Sure, yes. Hi. Sorry, I was in a different room, but here I am.
There you are.
New link. So yes, hi, I'm Homa Sarabi, and I'm the filmmaker with Choreography of Light. And so sad that I couldn't be there with you all, but thank you for setting up the party.
Maybe I'll reframe this question, and whoever would be interested in answering first can. Homa, no pressure. But there's something so strange about finding poetry or looking for something that becomes poetry or builds poetry in itself. I've been snatching lines, Alexis, from your film that are so important or feel very resonate. And I think there's so much resonance throughout these pieces, very poetic resonance. Would you speak to that, or what you gleaned through the archive?
So this piece is 15 minutes of me allowing myself or giving myself permission to work with it in the freest way possible. For the last few years, I've been working on a feature documentary that this material is a part of. And I think I'm an experimental filmmaker, but I have a pretty, not even conventional, but just I have a doc background. So I think something that happens in working with archival material is this desire to show it on its face versus to treat it with a more interventionist sort of aesthetic perspective. And so that was something for me that and what helped with that was also realizing the urban scene was primarily a public affairs show. So it's a lot of people trying to look their finest, talking about important issues of their time in their communities. But then there would be this like wild sort of Afrocentric cultural, like just stuff happening through performance, through music, through poetry, through dance. And when I realized, oh, I have, and it's like an episode dedicated to like the performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing comes from an episode about honoring MLK as we're sort of having this larger discussion as a nation of if we want to make his birthday a federal holiday. So it's a whole entire performance block of civil rights movement songs, also songs from that particular artist in their own personal catalog. You've got a sort of Anna Bishop was a sort of storied poet from Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm from. And there's the Bishop's Roundtable was just, okay, we're going to have youth and people across all generations reading their personal poems. Some of those poems are really hard. And just, I think, recognizing like, oh, I want to create my own kind of variety show in this moment. And, you know, and just in the ways in which like art, literature, physical movement, you know, tell these broader, more intense political stories. And even with the Jesse Jackson Democratic Convention, like there are musical moments like within that. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of like what my head was doing.
Absolutely. I think perhaps Homa, your piece as almost in the most literal way that represents the name of this program as a like re-representation of the movement of a camera or the conditions of filmmaking. Would you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I've been sort of in different works and in different mediums, sort of like coming back to this structural questions and structural studies and attention to what is the process of image making and what is the process of engaging with light. I had another piece that is just called Light, and it's a sort of a cinematic installation that is with a film looped on a 16mm film looped on a projection loop, and it's I have written the word light in Farsi on every single frame of it. So I'm just saying like this in this like structure, and this film, the choreography of light, was sort of like step 2 after that piece for me. And I was thinking about the ways that I could be talking, what are the ways I can talk about the process of physical filmmaking that engages the physicality of the body, the camera, the process. And that's where the idea of like choreographing the process came from. It's kind of dorky, but in some ways, and silly if you say it in like, you know, and I feel like that has been like sort of like maybe many people's reactions who don't think about the medium in this way, that they'll be like, what do you mean you choreographed the process of 16mm filmmaking? Like, what does that mean? But for me, through all those years of having worked with 16mm filmmaking, the thing that is really interesting and gripping with it is the mechanics of the production, both in the camera and also in the process that you engage with physically with your body. And then there's obviously the physicality of the film. That is the special thing for me with working with film, physical film, that this material has a very, very specific physical quality to it, and holds on to light. That physical quality is able to carry light. So all of this together sort of like formed this this idea of choreographing the process that goes between the body, the process of the filmmaking, and the film itself, and engaging with, could we figure out other ways to carry light through this performance, the way that the film, the body of the film does. So it's an attempt, so it's a study. It's a way of trying and seeing if it happens or not. And some moments it does happen in the film, and some moments it does, and it's just the process again. Yeah, I hope I answered through my rambles.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I'm just looking at our time, and I'd like to ask if anyone in the audience has questions. Not unsure what to say. Yeah.
My question is for Alexis. I loved your film. I'm curious how, for the video manipulation, how intuitive versus how structural your decisions were, how you landed on what to use when, how you even landed on to do the manipulation. Yeah.
I love video synthesis. I was a painter before I was a filmmaker, so I think my editing process, because it was basically watching through everything multiple times and just making excerpts and then doing this sort of part digital, part analog workflow where I would, and RIP anyone's ability to do this, it's getting more challenging. Printing to tape to mini DV, 2 channels, and then basically saying like this channel is this kind of material or this kind of material, and then putting those into cameras and then hooking up all of my synthesis analog equipment. Some stuff is circuit bent, some stuff is the stuff that as it came, hooking everything together, looking at a monitor, but actually, so the signal, like there's definitely digital stuff happening there. My goal for the next round is actually just to purely go back to VHS and then digitize that, because I feel like there's this fluidity that is missing in the signal. But yeah, just fast forwarding, rewinding, mixing, seeing just sort of how space is being taken up. And so I just sort of for hours just sketched this interplay of the material and did different takes with different material, and then brought that all back in to Premiere and was like, okay, what do I got? So I mean, I think there was some stuff where I felt like I made a timeline where it was sort of associational parallels. So just like things that I already felt intuitively made sense with one another. But for the most part, it was just like, okay, let's pilot this. And yeah, it was very fun. I mean, I think there should be joy. I mean, this is art making, there's joy here. And I had a lot of fun making this piece. So
That definitely comes through. Yeah.
Any other audience questions? Alexis, it is so evident that there's a painterly eye in your filmmaking process. Thank you for letting us know. Samara, I'm interested to hear what you had to say about love. Perhaps this can be an open question to end us, and maybe to ask Joseph too about what is evoked in the challenge between the machine, the mechanized building, and the hand of the artist, the hand of the architect. Maybe the dissonance between the two, and then maybe final words. Do you have any? Yeah, sorry, good start.
Well, it really struck me how everyone's film was so much like born out of love, either love for other people or like love for the medium. And it feels like, I don't know, like it feels like for my film, there isn't a lot of love except for the very end. And I thought like the lines could be, I don't know, would be like a nice resonance, you know, with the works of everyone. Like it's a euphoria born out of like the blood rushing out of the head and this lightheadedness. And I guess like moving from this kind of literally, you know, like a heady space into more of like an emotive space. So with the like euphoria of impending death and also of a plane crashing, they floated on a warm current of love and watched the peach on the lip of the horizon be sucked dry.
Those lines echoed.
Yeah, I felt there was an echo.
Absolutely. Yes, Jesse.
Okay, I'm going to try to answer your question quickly here. Yeah, since I'm just capturing the work that's happening and not doing it, I think my relationship to it is pretty different than the laborers. But Ronald, Rael, Logman, Arja, and Michael Jaron are the 3 people in the film who are doing the work. There was a lot of toil. So like the relationship between the mechanized and the stuff that they're doing by hand isn't necessarily smooth, at least for the several days I was there. The machine would mess up. In some ways, it seemed like even though the mixing of the mud is very difficult, the mental strain of not knowing whether the robot was going to work or not seemed harder. Again, from my limited perspective, since I wasn't doing the work, but the relationship between those 2 is complicated. And yeah, but just to highlight the stuff done by hand, I mean, this was immensely difficult work, and it's just sweating and sweating and sweating. They're working all day long. At some point you're clicking some buttons on a computer to get the robot to print mud, but you have to mix the mud, you got to move the mud around. It's a complicated and very difficult process. I do think there's like some magic in it, though. I think that's part of what captured me, is that combination of the mechanized with the doing things by hand. There's something transcendent that's happening that I don't quite know how to put words to.
Yeah, the way that it repeats is incredible. I wish we could have more time to talk, but we do have to wrap up this discussion and hope that we can be in touch. I have more questions. So thank you so much for joining us online. Thank you, Josh, for being here in person. See you all at 1 p.m., I hope, our next slot. Thank you. Careful, they're all checked. Yeah.